Canadian here. Welcome to this English lesson where I'm going to recommend 6 books that you can read to help improve your English. Well, hey, welcome to this video where I'm going to give you 6 recommendations for books that you can read to improve your English. But before we get started, if you are new to these English lessons, please click that red subscribe button below and give me a thumbs up at some point during this video if it's helping you learn English. So we're going to look at 6 different books, and I'm going to go in order of how thick they are. So the first book I'm starting with is a book called The Pearl. I'm going to hide behind the book so the camera focuses on it for a second. The Pearl is a really good book about what happens when someone encounters something of great wealth in their life. It's a book by John Steinbeck. It is a classic, and it's a book that high school students regularly read in Canada. It is a total of 88 pages long, so not a super long book in that sense, and I think a really good book for you to read to learn just a little bit of English. I've recommended this book to some of you, and some of you have responded by telling me that this was a great story to read. It's called The Pearl. A pearl is something that you find inside of an oyster, and it has great value. So I don't want to give you too much information about the book, but this is my first recommendation of a book that you could read. My second recommendation is a book called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And this is a book by C.S. Lewis. This is what we would call a fantasy book. So it takes place in a fictional world. And it is a really good book to read because, first of all, once again, it's thin. It's a little bit thicker than The Pearl. It is a total of, let me see here, 188 pages. But I read this story as a kid. So it's not a simple book, but it is easy to understand. So this is my second recommendation. If you read this book, or if you choose this book, you will want to be someone who enjoys stories that are about the fantasy world or a fantasy world. This takes place in a land called Narnia, and it tells a story of some children who find their way from our world into this fantasy world. It's a great book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, by C.S. Lewis. I think you'll enjoy it. The next book that I want to recommend to you is a book called Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. This is what we would call a science fiction book. So it takes place in the future. It takes place in space. It takes place on Earth and in space. And it is a really good story. It's not super long. It's thicker, of course, than The Pearl and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This book comes in at 209 pages. But I really enjoyed this book. It tells the story of a boy named Ender Wiggin. And he goes to a school where he learns to be a soldier in the future. I don't want to say too much about this story, but I really enjoyed this book when I read it as a kid. In fact, I have read this book 3 times so far. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Ender's Game are also both available as movies, so that can be very helpful for you as well. Anyways, recommendation number 3, Ender's Game. Really good book. My fourth recommendation is also science fiction, but it's also a really funny science fiction book, and it's called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Now, before you think this is a really thick book, this particular volume actually contains 4 books, and this book itself is only, let me see here, 252 pages. So it's really only this much of the book is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The reason I love this book, it is science fiction, but the reason I love it is because it is funny. And I think as an English learner, if you read this book, I think the humor is easy enough to understand that as an English learner, you would really appreciate it and like it as well. So book number 4, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think you'll really like it. Oh, also available as a movie. So you could read the book and then go see the movie. The 5th book that I'm going to recommend is called The Life of Pi, and this is by Yann Martel. This is actually written by a Canadian author. You should fact check that. You should check on Google to make sure I'm telling the truth. But this is by an author from Canada, and it's The Life of Pi. It's the story of a boy who is originally from India, and due to circumstances in life, he questions all the different religions, and he ends up making kind of an unorthodox trip across the ocean. You'll have to look that word up. But Life of Pi, you'll see there's a small boy in a boat with a tiger. Hopefully that creates some intrigue for you. So Life of Pi, that's the next book that I highly recommend that you read. It comes in at 396 pages, so a little longer than the other recommendations, but I do think this is a great book for you to read. So the next book I'm going to recommend is The Firm by John Grisham. John Grisham is actually a really good author. He writes very exciting books. I think you'll really enjoy this one. And when you're done reading it, there is also a movie of the same name. So that's a really cool thing about most of the books I've recommended. There is usually a movie that you can watch after you read it. But The Firm is an exciting story. It's a story about a lawyer, and if you like stories about the law, if you like stories about lawyers, I think you will really, really enjoy this one as well. It was a very exciting book for me to read. In fact, I have read almost all of John Grisham's books because this was one of the first ones I read, and it was very exciting. So I think you will enjoy it. Well, hey, Bob the Canadian here. That was 6 books that you can read to help improve your English. I'm sorry about the dog barking in the background. I assure you it's not Oscar, but the neighbor's dog seems to be a little bit upset. Maybe the dog doesn't like that I'm recommending that you read books to help you learn English. Anyways, Bob the Canadian here. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please hit that subscribe button if you are new here, and give me a thumbs up if this video helped you learn just a little bit.